Hello and welcome to today's devotional. My name is Jack Heineke. Today we're in the book of Jonah, chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. But it greatly displeased Jonah, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, is this not what I said when I was still in my country? That is why I ran to Tarshish, because I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and great in loving kindness, and when sinners turn to you, you revoke the sentence of disaster against them. Therefore now, O Lord, just take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." Then the Lord said, "Do you have a good reason to be angry?" This guy Jonah has issues. Well, we all have issues, but Jonahs are not that uncommon, but they're definitely particular to this guy Jonah back in this day. So God calls Jonah to go to Nineveh, which was in the country of Assyria, to call on the people there to repent before God destroys that city. God was planning on destroying the city. He takes Jonah, says, "I want you to go there and tell them about me, and if they turn and repent and turn to me, I won't destroy them." But Jonah hates the people of Nineveh because the Assyrians were enemies of Israel. And those were the last people that he thought God should save. And that's probably why God sent Jonah in the first place, because God knew of Jonah's prejudice against these people, and he wanted Jonah to confront that very prejudice that was deep in Jonah's heart. God knows what stands in the way of our relationship with him, and he is always willing to get our cooperation in facing and confronting it to remove it. But as the story goes, Jonah takes off on a ship heading essentially in the opposite direction of Nineveh to a place called Tarshish, in the vain hopes of avoiding God and God's call. That was actually a command to Jonah to go and to tell those people about his God, who was angry with those people and was about to execute severe judgment on them, but God being God wanted to give them a chance at salvation. And God being God didn't want to send a friendly ambassador to Nineveh. He chose to send someone who hated these people with as racist and as foul of an attitude that you could find. We might say that God works in mysterious ways, but I say he works in brilliant ways. So the ship is about to be shipwrecked when the crew tries to find out the cause of this storm that threatens to break this ship into pieces. And what does the captain of the ship find? Jonah asleep during this crazy storm. The captain wakes him up and tells him to call on the name of his Lord. So the crew casts lots to find out who was the cause of this situation, and guess who the lots fell on? Right onto Jonah. They then ask Jonah, "Well, who is to blame for what's going on here, and who are you?" Jonah says, "I'm a Hebrew who fears and worships the Lord, and this Lord is the one that made the land and the sea." This scared the bejesus out of the crew. The crew asked Jonah, "What should we do with you?" Because the crew knew that Jonah was the reason why the storm was happening. Jonah replies, "Throw me into the sea, because this is happening because of me." Instead, the crew, who are now scared entirely out of their wits, try to row back to land, but they can't make it because God just won't let them. So they end up praying to God, asking for his favor that he would not destroy them because they're about to throw his boy off the ship. So that's exactly what the crew did. They throw Jonah out into the sea. And that's when the storm stopped, and that's when Jonah met a big old fish, and that fish has been divinely appointed for Jonah to hook up with, just as the crew of the ship were divinely appointed to meet with God. None of this happens by accident. God always knows what he's doing, and that's why he's so brilliant. So Jonah ends up in the belly of this big fish, which many of us may have heard about from Sunday school. It is in the belly of the fish that Jonah thinks he's about to die, because what other conclusion could Jonah come to? So he prays to God for God to bless him and to spare his life. So what does God do? He has the fish spit him out on dry land, and God then instructs him again to go to Nineveh to give them the message that I will give to you when you get there. Even if you don't know the message prior to delivering the message, don't worry about that, because God will let you know exactly what to say in the moment to say it. So Jonah does what he was commanded to do, but he did not like having to do this at all, because the Ninevites repented. They heard the message, it sunk down into their wicked, sinful hearts, and they did not want to perish and instead trusted God. So God spared that city and its people from destruction. But Jonah was not happy about this at all. Jonah responds by sulking himself into a woe-is-me self-pity party. Jonah is angry. Jonah is so angry that he has the nerve to say to God, "Isn't this what I told you would happen if we came here? I know you, God, and I know you're gracious and merciful, and you would save these people from their sin, and I didn't want that to happen, because they don't deserve to be saved from their sin." Sounds like what Jonah didn't realize was that he didn't deserve salvation either, and that none of us deserve salvation, but that God is a God who wants to give it to us plain and simple. Jonah continues to rant about how you might as well just kill me while I'm here, like a pathetic, broken little child who just didn't get his way and is now throwing a temper tantrum. God's response to Jonah was a very simple, direct question that was as logical as could be. "Jonah, do you have any reason to be angry?" To which Jonah replied by just getting up and walking away again, just as he did when he tried to run away from God by getting on that ship that was about to be broken up because of his disobedience to God. Now, if I had been God, I would have done something that would have been something along the lines of enacting some severe discipline on Jonah. But I'm clearly not God. Only God is God. And it's funny how the God of the Old Testament has gotten such a bad rap throughout all these years. Like the God of the Old Testament is the bad cop, and then Jesus comes along because he's just been sitting on the sidelines doing nothing, waiting to get into the game, and comes into the game during the New Testament, and he's the good cop. Not to those Pharisees he called whitewashed tombs who are of their father, the devil, or to those money changers he chased out of the temple courtyard with a whip. It's pretty interesting how Satan has totally twisted up the actual truth of the Bible in mainstream culture. What God does is God has a plant grow over Jonah's head where he's laying on this ground so that Jonah won't get sunburned and die. Then God takes a major left turn the next morning and has a worm eat up the plant, and the plant withers. God then sends a scorching east wind and lets the sun bake Jonah. Jonah's clearly still upset, still whining, still complaining, telling God, "Just let me die here." God then asks Jonah that question again, but with a slight change. "Do you have good reason to be angry at the loss of the plant?" Jonah replies, "Yes, I have very good reason to be angry at the loss of the plant. Angry enough to die." God then reads him the riot act. "You had compassion on the plant, which you had nothing to do with its being there. Should I not have compassion on Nineveh, where there are 120,000 innocent people who don't know their right hand from their left, and therefore aren't accountable for their sin?" That's interesting, isn't it? "Should I have killed them all, and all the animals that live there too?" This is where the book of Jonah ends. It does not record any response from Jonah, so we have no idea what happened to Jonah after this. But we know of a God who loves us, who has mercy and grace upon us, and who wants to rescue and save every person alive, and will sometimes send people that hate the very people they are to minister to. In this story, we see someone who knows God well enough to know what God was going to do, that God was going to be graceful and merciful and rescue and save these people, but still rebelled against God about God doing this, as God was blessing him and rescuing him and saving him. As stated, God gets a bad rap, as people who say they don't believe in him even blame him for whatever sinful thing they can choose. But it is Jonah and you and I who are guilty here. This is what the world doesn't understand about God. This is a God unlike anything else called God, who displays love in the face of a screaming, immature little brat blaming God for the horrible state of the world, when it's all of us horrible, immature little brats who had a hand in the world becoming what it is. Not one of us is as pure as we delusionally think we are. People desperately look for a scapegoat, someone else to blame for the mess this world is in. And the funny thing is that God provides an innocent, unblemished, incapable of sinning lamb.